So Rosie, I think 10 minutes in the group discussion, and then we come back for question and answers.
Yeah, that sounds perfect, Patrick. Thank you. So everybody should receive an invitation to a breakout room. There are about 5 people per breakout room. In some, there might be 4 of you. And those are the questions that Patrick has asked you. He's shared quite a bit. And please create opportunities for everybody to get a chance to share in your breakout room. Any questions that come up for you that arise, please make a note of them, because when we come back, we're going to open up the session for a conversation with Patrick. So I'm opening the breakout rooms, and I have seen the messages in the chat. I will respond to them. Thanks, everyone. We will see you back in 10 minutes. We'll give you a 60-second warning, I hope, but we'll see you in 10 minutes. Good conversation. Breakaway room. Would love to hear some of your thoughts and comments, but especially questions that you have for Patrick. So what struck you about what Patrick shared with us, or what struck you about your conversation, or what questions do you have for Patrick? And you can raise your hand so we can see you, and then we can know who wants to speak. Maureen, I see you. Please go ahead. Maureen, you're muted if you're talking.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you perfectly. Then you're now muted,
Yes,
Maureen.
we can.
I'm just asking Maureen to unmute herself so that we can hear her.
Yes, I have unmuted. Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so thank you to Dominic and the deputy from ATA. It was lovely talking with them, and I was saying to them, I am retired, so I'm looking at all these things from a bird's eye view, because I've gone through the experience already. But I think we are acknowledging these 5 areas of human intelligence as leaders, or all 3 of us are acknowledging. But we're saying we are operating in a system that is, you know, it's workload driven. And my 2 colleagues were saying there is too much to deal with in terms of administration, the number of learners in the institution where they are, the pressures that they have to deal with. I think the question they want to raise with the presenter is, how do they strike a balance with all these issues that they have to deal with, the pressures, the demand from the system that says submit this and that in terms of administration, the number of, and all the challenges that we deal with on day-to-day basis. How do we strike a balance so that we can be able to be not emotional in our leadership, to understand the culture in which we are operating, but also to possess those core beliefs that help us to be good leaders, you know, leaders that are intelligent enough to lead the organizations in which we belong, so that we don't rely entirely on making fiscal decisions that are sometimes based on poor emotions. How do we strike a balance? Okay.
Thanks, Maureen. I hear you. How do we strike a balance? Patrick, I'm wondering if I should take a couple of questions and then come to you.
Yeah, so maybe take 3 at a time, and then we can
Okay, so we'll take 3. Johan, I see you. Can I just ask Mofokeng, and then Johan, I will come to you. Mofokeng, I see your hand is up. Please go ahead.
Ma'am, you know, I've struggled to participate in my group that you've allocated to me, but otherwise, I'm here. I just want to apologize to my colleagues there. My point is, most of us are struggling with emotional intelligence. Who can really, you know?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
My point is, what is that near that side can advise us, you know, on emotional intelligence, because that's the area that most of us are struggling on. Yes, I think that's my only concern. That's my only question, if I can put it that way.
Yeah.
But generally, I'm happy with all the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Mafoko. I'm gonna take Johan Koopman and Samuel. I see Jay Cowley. I see your hand is up. And then I saw Tandazile, but let's take Johan Koopman and then we'll go to Patrick and then we'll come back for another round.
Good afternoon, everyone. My concern is that, you know, as teachers, there's a lack of support coming from the education department, and it's having a massive impact on schools. And then also, with the pandemic, there's been a dip in people educating themselves and making inquiries, especially teachers, you know, where they sit and they don't even know what happened on the news the day before. Is this the norm? There's people that wanting to go back to the old normal. Is this what we should be doing? We as leaders, we need to obviously look at how we're going to correct that. But is it the responsibility of the leader to encourage or to make sure that people are educating themselves? And to what extent do you do that? Thank you.
Thanks, Johan. Patrick, I'm going to hand over to you. I have another round of questions for you, but let's take these ones to begin with.
Yeah, okay. No, thanks, Rosie. So thanks, Maureen. Yes, I think as a leader, one of the things I mentioned is leadership involves you're dealing with internal pressures of what's happening within you as the leader, but you're also having to deal with external pressures, which has to do with the environment that you are operating in. And therefore, when you talk about some of the issues around balance, what is taking place inside of me, I must always take the position that I am firmly in control over what's happening inside of me, despite the external circumstances. So if I want to be, if I have a value of patience, then I'm going to be patient irrespective of what Rosie does or doesn't do, because it's my value. Rosie cannot change that value. If I have a high empathy rate towards emotional intelligence, in terms of I want to be able to connect with Rosie, to understand what's happening in Rosie's life before I make a decision that regards or that affects Rosie, then my emotional intelligence is going to drive me to do that despite the external environment. So I think as leaders, we need to be very clear that as a leader, we need to be strong internally to be who we say we are, despite what's happening outside. Now, when it comes to the issues of balance and the pressures that are there, whether it's doing reports or whatever needs to be done, for me, that's now beginning to outline some of the constraints that are maybe in place that are stopping us from being able to be as effective as we can be. So that for me becomes a constraint. And therefore the issue now is, how do we deal with that constraint? How do we influence such that that constraint can be taken away? It might not be taken away tomorrow, but if the education department is putting certain constraints on you, and you are now identifying what those constraints are, then perhaps there needs to be a mechanism where you can be lobbying your constraints so that over time, those constraints are removed. It might not be an easy process or even a short process. Again, let me go back and use even the example of Nelson Mandela that I used. He lobbied for a cause for 20 years, for 27 years, but he remained lobbying for that cause because he wanted to see change. So it wasn't something that could easily change, but he stood his ground and he kept lobbying for that constraint to be removed. In terms of Mafokeng, emotional intelligence, again, emotional intelligence at the end of the day is about, do I see the person in front of me as a human being who has feelings, who has emotions, who probably has a family, who has all of the same things that I have, and am I willing to deal with them at that level? Because one of the things I always say, again, even when I'm talking to some business leaders, is often we've become so transactional that we don't see each other as human beings anymore. We see ourselves as work robots. And therefore, we are behaving in ways that make us slightly less than human, where we take away, somehow we take away the understanding that a fellow human being has feelings, has emotions, has all of these things. So I want to be able to connect with that, knowing that the decisions, even the words that I'm speaking to them, go beyond words. They go into the essence of who they are as a human being. So when it comes to developing emotional intelligence, the first question I ask is, are you seeing the other person as a other human being that deserves dignity, respect, and therefore, even if it's in a tough situation, even if it's in a disciplined situation, even if it's in a disagreement situation, can I still connect in a way that affords that person respect and dignity? If I can do that, I'm already quite high on my emotional intelligence with how I'm dealing with that person. Johan, you talked about lack of support. I think this also keys into what I was saying for Maureen, that these are some of the constraints. When I hear you talk about lack of support again from departmental structures, these are some of the constraints that you are having to deal with, that you are identifying. The question becomes, as a leadership team, can we make sure we identify that constraint, and can we put together a plan of action that then says, this is how we can mitigate against this constraint? So if I have a teacher, I'm a head, again, I'm not in your profession, so I might be saying things that don't necessarily make sense, because you know what's on the ground, and I don't want to pretend as if I do, because I know these are real issues that you are dealing with. But just an example, if I'm a headmaster and I have a teacher working with me, and that teacher is not able to perhaps do some of the things that I would like her to do, because she spends 80% of her time needing to do reports because it's a requirement from the department for her to do that. Because I know that that is the situation, I, as a leader, now need to work with her within the constraints of that particular situation so that she can do the best that she can with the constraint. But at the same time, I also want to be working with her to say, how do we begin to lobby together, to work together as a school to get this constraint removed, because it's stopping us from doing what we want to do. The last thing I want to be doing is knowing that the constraint is there and then push her beyond what she can do, even though I know the constraint is there, and now ask her to do what is impossible without the constraint being removed. I want to be a leader that can help remove the constraint. I hope that helps with the first three.
Thanks, Patrick. I see there's a comment for you around. Well said indeed, Patrick. There's a question for you. I'm going to come to you, Samuel, but Patrick, there's a question in the chat. How would you deal with resistance to change in organizations? This is from Ruth. Samuel J. Crowley, let's hear your voice. You are muted if you are talking.
Can you hear me?
Now we can hear you.
Yeah. First of all, I must compliment you on what we are hearing here. It's a whole new scope of thinking and no scope of initiative that you bring about with this thing. I think what we as a group in the breakaway group said that how do you really and I think Petri alluded to it in his last remarks, how do you passionately involve everyone there? How do you really get people involved? I mean, and I said it very clearly. I said that you have the age gap that you have. You have that age gap where young people are at the school, older people at the school, and you have all this resistance towards change, man. Because now you're going to bring in change with a new vision that you want to bring across, and that in itself is change. And I think Koopman also alluded to the fact that you are so strained to do a lot of things for the department. You're trapped. Your whole plan, how do you put the plan together to manage the COVID situation at school? So all those constraints, and I think Patrick make it quite clear how do you get rid of those constraints. But we as a group also said that this common goal, how do you bring about the common goal to bring about this change you want to see in the school, and how do you take this leadership that you have? How can it really impact on the whole staff so that the vision can be centralized, so that we can move forward and say, this is what we want at our school. This is how we go about bring about the change, and it's also about the visionary change that we want to bring along into the school. And I also think about it, shouldn't we maybe do, before we start bringing in new changes, shouldn't we do a sort of SWOT analysis of the school situation now? How's our academics? Who's the compilation of our teaching staff? You know, all those things. Maybe we should actually start there, bring about the different changes to the school. But again, for us, it's important. I think Patrick said it very rightly so in his last remarks, and even in the opening remarks, that we have to work towards conscientizing ourselves about our emotional intelligence, and somehow put it across to the rest of the staff. You know, the enthusiasm, say, we are going to move there. There's constraints, but we have to move forward to bring about the newness to our school community as such. That is in a nutshell what we...
Thanks, Patrick, you got all of that. Thanks, Samuel. We're going to take Seth, and then we're going to go to Patrick for responses. Then we'll do a final quick round. Chidi, I see you. Monaheng, I see your question in the chat. So let's take Seth, and then we'll come to you, Patrick.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity. My question, Patrick, I'm looking at the challenges that has been brought about the pandemic. In our schools, we had some closure and learners being subdivided, where we had to change the timetables and so forth. But on the other hand, I'm seeing great opportunity in terms of online teaching platforms and the rest of all that. Currently, the department is not taking the lead in bringing some of these solutions, but technology is on our side as managers, as schools, as leaders, to grab it and enhance our teaching and learning situation. So I was hoping, unfortunately, the topic was not around online teaching, or maybe what can we use to improve the online teaching, or how to deal with this situation post-COVID. But my line of thinking was to say, now that this was part of leadership to some extent, I like to say we all have an opportunity to re-engineer our schools to adapt to the new ways of teaching using technology. It's more of a comment and a question at the same time. Thank you.
Thanks, Seth. Patrick, over to you. Chidi and Monaheng, those are the last two questions. We'll take them after Patrick's response.
Okay, thanks. Let me start off with Ruth on the chat. How do you deal with resistance to change in an organization? And I think it might touch on a little bit about what Samuel was also talking about. First of all, change is always a scary proposition for any human being. As human beings, we have a natural inclination to want to be in environments and situations that we are used to. And change brings about an unknown. And as soon as there is an unknown, human beings get uncomfortable because we always want to be in a situation where we know. And that's why even this whole COVID thing has been so tough, because we're constantly not knowing. And as human beings, when we don't know, we get very stressed. And when we don't know, we will end up resisting change. So how do we overcome this? As leaders, it is absolutely critical that change is not something that you impose alone upon people or a group of people. Change needs to be something that you do together. So as a leader, if you have an idea or a vision that you want to present to a group of people, the best way is not to impose your idea. The best way is to engage the people with your idea, asking them to also contribute towards the idea. Because when you get into that type of dialogue, what you are doing with people is that you are bringing them on board, but you are also giving them the opportunity to consider the unknowns and give them comfort to bring up the unknowns that make them comfortable. Make them uncomfortable. And once we can do that, what tends to happen is that people will then come together around the vision, especially if what you're wanting them to change is a better future and that they recognize that it's a better future. Then you find that the buy-in comes in. When as a leader, I typically walk into a room and I say, thus I say, this is what's going to happen, and it's going to happen by X, Y, Z, and everyone, you have to be on board. You don't have a choice. This is what we are doing. Immediately resistance will come because people are thinking, what's this? Why are we doing this? Is there an ulterior motive? Is there something else? All sorts of questions flood in because I am uncomfortable with the unknowns as to what's happening. But if I come in with an approach that is consultative, and everyone has the opportunity to contribute, all of a sudden that situation changes and people come on board and you find that the resistance to change goes away. So even with departments, I cringe when government, and again, I'm not here to criticize government, when government says, thus says government, it shall be done like this, and this is, there has to be consultation, there has to be people brought on board. Otherwise, resistance immediately comes to change. Samuel, absolutely critical points that you have mentioned, also touching on this issue of change. Again, let me also say with everything that you've said, Samuel, absolutely in agreement, because change is threatening. And to get around it, you also use the word common vision, involve. That's exactly it. People, it has to be a common vision. I might be the one who brings up the vision, but once I bring up a vision, my next strategy or my next move is not to force people to agree with my strategy. My next move as a leader is to say, guys, what do you think about this? What is your thought on this? What is your, because you see, as I am consultating in that way, Samuel, you might even have an idea that will actually complement what I have initially come up with to actually make this look even better. So as a leader, I'm not wanting to say that this is my vision. I'm not wanting to say, you go with what I've said. I'm actually looking for the ideas of my people around me. And I always say to people, guys, let's harness the people capital, the brain capital that we have available to us. I can come up with something using my own brain, or I can consult and get the best ideas from 20 people and put them together. And I can guarantee you we'll have something that's much better than what I have come up with by myself. And I will have buy-in, and I will have people that are willing to run the race with me and to run the race together, because we've done it together. It's not me pushing something on people. In terms of SWOT analysis, Samuel, absolutely agree. That's where that current reality that I spoke about in that diagram comes in, because what you are doing is you're identifying, this is the desired future. We identify what that looks like, but we also want to come back and say, this is the current reality. And in the current reality, we are beginning to identify what are all those things of where we are now, but we are doing our SWOT analysis there. What strengths do we have? What threats, what opportunities? Part of the current reality, part of the constraints, absolutely. We are putting all of that together so that when we start to come up with solutions, we know exactly that our solutions are addressing the things that we have come up with, and we know where we are strong, we know where we are weak, we know where we need help, we know where we have the resources, we know where we don't, and we're able to come up with a solution and therefore a implementation strategy. Seth, I think from your comment, all I can, I mean, you sort of made a few comments there. I think all I want to add to what you have said, when I hear you speak, Seth, what I hear is somebody who is driven by a passion to do, and I'm going to use this word, I hear somebody who's driven by a passion to do what they are called to do. And I believe there's so many people who are in the teaching profession and the education profession because it's a calling, because there's something about it that goes beyond just money and whatever else. There's a passion that's behind it. And whenever you're doing something that you're passionate about, you will always find better ways of doing it, even though there are constraints ahead of you. So Seth, when you talk about, you know, the COVID going to online, etc., that for me is somebody who's passionate and has a calling about what they're doing. And so you're constantly finding ways to bring improvement and to still deliver the service that you need to deliver to your students. That's what somebody does when it's a calling. And so I believe that if you have people who are in your team who are called for something, you will find that you will find ways to deliver your service despite the constraints. And as you do that, what tends to happen in teams or organizations that do that, you begin to raise the bar in terms of the delivery of service you are doing. And when you raise the bar, you become very attractive. There's some schools out there that I believe, even in disadvantaged areas, because they have people who have a calling, they raise the bar, and therefore even parents desperately want to get their children to those places. And when that starts to happen, it begins to mean that if there are donors who are looking to support schools and do whatever, they're more likely to go and donate and give of their resources to the places where they see initiative is and you find through that it becomes an indirect way where you begin to mobilize resources, etc., because of your initiative that arises from your calling. So I hope that helps in some way, Seth. Back to you, Rosie.
Patrick and everybody, I am noticing that we have 2 minutes to go. What I want to do is say Nonhlanhla has put the link for feedback into the chat. So if you need to leave us, please, we would love to get some feedback from you. It is very important for us so we know how to better tailor these events for you and we can get the topics on the table. I know, Seth, you were talking about online learning and all of that stuff. That's feedback that you can give us. And there are hands up for you, Patrick, and a question in the chat. So I also just want to check with you, Patrick, if you're happy to take these 3 questions and then we'll wrap it up for today.
I'm good, Rosie. So I'm more worried about the time for the people who are attending. Yeah. I'm good. So I'm happy to take the question.
Patrick is good. We've got 3 more questions. If you need to leave, we really appreciate your time and your participation. And if you would love to hang around and hear the answers to these 3 questions, please, please, please stay. The question in the chat is from Monacheng, and she says, they say, how do Novice teachers deal with the situation where their school management team allocate a certain subject, especially those that they can't teach without consulting them? So we'd love to hear your thoughts on that, Patrick. Then I see Yvonne, and then I see Mr. Morobe, and then we'll come back to you, Patrick, for responses. Yvonne, please go ahead. Yvonne, you're muted if you are talking.
Sorry about that. Sorry about that. I wanted to say I'm very, very passionate about the development of emotional intelligence in a school. And I would love to engage with others out of this forum about that. I'm a retired principal, and it was something that I tried to grow in my school for over 20 years. And I'd love to engage with other principals about this topic. So I just wanted to put that out there, actually, Rosie. And I want to thank Patrick very, very much for highlighting the importance of EQ. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah. Thanks, Yvonne. Yvonne, given the forum that we're on, can I ask people to direct message you in the chat if they feel like they want to connect? Okay,
yes,
so
sure.
please, Yvonne, a direct message, please, on the chat. Find her in the participants list and then just email her, send her a note to connect. We'll take a question from Mr. Morobe, and then Chidi, I saw you disappear, and then we'll take Chidi, and then we're going to close the questions for today.
All right, thank you for giving me an opportunity. Can you hear me?
Can hear you perfectly.
All right, thank you very much. I come in as a novice. I can say that as a novice educator who is passionate about education. My student line education. The challenge that I have experienced that has even caused me to move from one of the schools here in Free State is that when you get to a school where the system of doing things, the system of leading and managing and governing the school is, can I say it's outdated, that you find that most of the things are not functioning as required because of the leadership styles that are not reinvented. How do I reinvent myself when I find myself in a situation whereby now I'm dealing with adults who are resistant to change? They have done their part for the department, and they feel like bringing in new systems and whatever is actually a waste of their time. And they frustrate you. You end up changing the school because now, as a young person, you'll end up being also reluctant to go to work. You'll end up being lazy to think because of such an environment. I had to move from the school because it was really draining me. That's not the personality that I know myself for. So I had to move. How do I reinvent my leadership capabilities and and aspirations, if I find myself that I'm in a situation whereby I cannot change the situation for the better, these people are fine as they are. They don't want to change, and whatever they are doing is not working, because as you are in such a seminar or conversations, you understand where other schools are going, and it's evident that your school is stagnant and not moving with times, but you are not a decision maker within the school. That's the problem with our system. As educators, we are limited, because there are governors, and there's SMT that is clearly in charge of the school more than educators. And when they are resistant to change, there's nothing that we can do. How do we fit in? How do we fit in? That's my question. How do I reinvent myself so that I don't become part of the states of people who are not taking the country forward? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Patrick, will come to you. Just one last hand from Chidi 939028. Let's hear you, and then we're going to hand over to Patrick for our final round of responses.
Thank you very much, ma'am. That is Chidi 9390. I don't know where it comes from. It's technology. You had the guy. I'm an old horse. Otherwise, I wanted us to talk to emotional intelligence, noting that some responses from an individual are sometimes spontaneous, and then one is not so sure whether this emotional intelligence is inborn or one can develop it as he or she grows up. Can we maybe be taken on board? Yeah. And then on the last one, on developing leadership intelligence, there is this spiritual and cultural. I'm not so sure. Five areas of human intelligence: spiritual and cultural. Will it harm a fly if we fuse them and then allow them to talk to religion, other than them being separated? Because on organizational leadership, I've got culture, where we'll be talking of the style of doing things, how we do things at work, I guess. And then on this one, cultural and spiritual, to me, seem to be contradictory. I'm not necessarily contradictory. Can we fuse them? Can we fuse them and call it religious? Yeah. Thank you. It's my submission.
Patrick, I'm going to hand over to you for a final round of responses. I see there's appreciation for you in the chat as well. So let's take final round, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay, thanks, Rosie. So let me start with Monaheng in the chat. How do novice teachers deal with a situation where their school management team allocate certain subjects, especially those that they can't teach without consulting them? Yeah, this is such a difficult one, Monaheng, because first of all, what they are demonstrating to you is the worst of what leadership is, because as leaders, they should really be consulting you before they allocate a subject to you. So for me, what you've just described there is the worst of leadership, where a leader does not even take time to understand who their people are, what their people are equipped in, etc., and just allocate something. Because first of all, it does harm to the person they are doing that to, but it also does harm to the quality of the service delivery, which is what they are supposed to be in charge of, to making sure that you, Monaheng, do the best that you can do based on what you have. And by the way, if they want you to step into a role that you are not fully equipped to, then they need to take the responsibility to make sure that they equip you and empower you to be able to do it. So I'm speaking from the other side. Let me come and answer your question now, Monaheng. And I think it can be very sensitive, because I know that we are talking about, if people are that bad at leadership to do this, then the next thing that I'm going to say might be very risky to do it. Because ideally, if one is dealing with leadership who have any bit of leadership in them, then one should be able to go to them and to say, these are the skills that I have. This is what I'm strong at. And therefore, what you are asking me to teach is not my area of expertise. And therefore, I'm telling you that so that if you want me to continue in this area, then we need to put a plan in place for me to be trained and equipped and empowered to be able to do this. Otherwise, you are setting me up for failure and you are not delivering the service that's supposed to be delivered to the students because of what you are doing. So that's how one would approach it. But I obviously understand that the way I'm saying it can be very sensitive because unfortunately, if you are dealing with people who are this bad at leadership to do what they've done here, they might even take it in a very wrong way and you put your job at risk. So I think all I'm saying there, Monaheng, is if there's an opportunity for you to be able to discuss it with them and be very honest in terms of you need equipping to do what you need to do, then do that. If you are not in a position to do that because it puts your job at risk, then all I would then say is you perhaps have to now almost take it upon yourself to try, put some requests in for some training, put some, again, I don't know how your school works, but this is not a good situation for you because it could lead up to you being set up for failure, and it has a big impact on your career and your future going forward. So I don't know if that helps you, Monahi. It's such a deep thing that it probably needs a bit more discussion to understand the environment that you are in, but I hope that helps. Yvonne, thank you so much for your comments. Again, I think you made some great comments. I really believe that as a ex-principal, you understand very well what the issues around emotional intelligence look like in a educator's environment. And therefore, again, I don't know if these types of resources are out there already, but perhaps, Yvonne, this is an opportunity for you to bring some of the skills that you've picked up over those 20 years and maybe begin to develop some very simple tools and material that teachers can use to help them understand this area of emotional intelligence and almost start to equip them in this area, which I think is absolutely critical and will become even more critical as time goes on. So I think that's my comment for Yvonne. Mr. Morobe, very similar to the Monaheng situation. You are in an environment, your leadership, the people you are working with, outdated. You are almost like the person who's wanting to see change, who's wanting to see things move forward, but the people around you are very stagnant. First of all, let me start off by saying that you remain the leader that you are. Never allow the environment to take away who you are so that you end up conforming to the environment. And that's how leaders can get literally crucified and die. And we lose leaders because we end up just, this will never change. And we end up conforming to the bad behaviors, or we end up conforming to the negative culture. We must be able, as true leaders, to stand up and say, but you know what, I don't agree with this. And therefore, the best you can do, especially when you are at a lower level in your organization, you maybe don't have the position of as I said right at the beginning, leadership is not necessarily about a position. You see, management can be about a position because management control, you're putting management controls on people. Leadership is about influencing people. And therefore, for you, Mr. Morobe, it can even be a situation where rather than trying to get your ideas in front of the entire school, perhaps it's initially just in casual debate with other teachers. Guys, what would happen if we looked at it like this? what would happen if we try to do this? So you're almost getting into a dialogue with people, but one of the most powerful attributes of leadership is asking questions. Because you see, when you enter into a conversation where you are asking questions, you are saying to the other person, I want to hear your ideas. I'm willing to share mine, but I want to hear yours. And often why people get into stagnation is because they are in an environment where their ideas are not sought after. So I would suggest to you, Mr. Morobe, you become that person who is seeking out other people's ideas. That could be your fellow teachers. It could be even other people within the school who are at a lower level than you, but be known as the person who is interested in other people's ideas. Because once you become that person, people will begin to share ideas with you, but you will also begin to activate people's ideas. And the more that happens, you are already becoming a catalyst for change because you are pulling ideas out of people. So many people are desperate for other people to be interested in their ideas, but they never have anyone ask them, tell me how you're thinking. What do you think about this? How would you do this differently if we had an opportunity to do it differently? You are pulling you're becoming the ideas person, even though you're not necessarily the principal or the headmaster, etc. But you are using leadership skills to build influence because you are seeking people's ideas. So I hope that helps you, Mr. Morabe. And then last one, Chidi, I won't put the 939 or 9, whatever that's there, the technology. Yeah, so just a very quick explanation on the spiritual intelligence, cultural intelligence, and then also the other diagram that talked about vision, strategy, leadership, culture, and people. So that particular one was talking about it more looking at it from an organizational perspective. So you need to have the right culture that is conducive for the people to engage and to do their work. So even when I was saying to Mr. Morobe, it could be one of the things that as a culture, let's build a culture of sharing ideas. Let's build a culture of asking people their thoughts, because it cultivates engagement when you do that. So that's at the organizational level. Let me come back to the other diagram, which talked about the culture, the cultural and the spiritual, which is the individual level. So that particular diagram, maybe I didn't make it clear, and I apologize for that. That particular one is talking about me as an individual. How am I going through my decision processes within my own mind? Because the sum of my decision processes, yes, those will also come into the organization, but that particular one in terms of physical intelligence, intellectual, emotional, cultural, spiritual, this is about Patrick. This is about how am I making decisions? How am I considering what I should be doing at any given time? How am I taking the input that's coming from outside and processing it as I make decisions? And the cultural, the reason why the cultural and the spiritual are separated at that level is at a cultural level, what I'm really doing is I'm taking into consideration that my culture is not the only culture. And therefore, when I'm also interacting with people of different cultures, I need to be aware that I might have a piece of information at an intellectual level that is relevant for my culture. But if I'm talking to somebody of a different culture, my intellectual information might not be relevant for them because their culture views that piece of information differently. And I need to be aware of that. And if I am sensitive to that, I'm able to engage with that person and make decisions with that person because I'm not insisting that what I see as my culture has to prevail and theirs doesn't get any consideration. So that's where that comes in. And then obviously the spiritual side is basically now saying these, as I said, these are my core beliefs. These are my core values. This is my purpose in life. This is how I view the existence of the bigger world. And therefore, there is, you know, I always say to people, at times people talk about a sixth sense. It's the sixth sense that's within me that says, you know what, I've heard this, but you know, within me, I know that this is not right. I know that this person has done X, Y, Z, but you know what, let me give them another chance. I know that this is what has happened, but you know what, my core belief just says, you know what, maybe I need to behave in this way, and I need to make my decision based in this way. So yes, the fact is this person has failed to do this, but my emotional intelligence is kicking in and saying, you know what, let me consider the situation that's involved here. Let me consider, you know what, maybe they were on a cultural, traditional weekend that they had to go for, because in their tradition, they do this during this weekend. Okay, so maybe I need to take that into consideration as I'm making my decision. And by the way, you know what, because I believe in giving other people a second chance, let me give them a second chance and let me give them the opportunity to do this. So I've gone through a process of making a decision, but I've used all of those different areas of intelligence. I've taken the facts, I've taken my heart towards another person. I've considered that we might be different people coming from different places culturally or environmental wise, but I've also taken my core beliefs to say, you know what, how do all of those things factor in? Because at the end of the day, leadership is also about the decisions I make and the quality of the decisions. And so a critical part of leadership is decision making. How am I? So even if it's as simple as a child who has not brought in their homework, all of those things are kicking in. Is my first indication, how dare this child not respect me? Because what's happening there is I'm thinking at a physical level. I'm wanting to exert physical control, because how dare this child do this? But perhaps I need to understand the facts. Okay, he hasn't given the homework on time, but let me get some information as to what's happening here. Once I get the information, I can then move that information into the emotional side. You know what? As a teacher, this kid, etc., I can then move it to a cultural side, and finally I can move it to a spiritual side, and I make a decision. And I say, you know, young man, you haven't had it in your homework, but this is what's going to happen. But I'm doing it because I have considered all factors of intelligence that I have within me. Let's not use one aspect of intelligence. Let's learn to use all five, because that's how we become good leaders when it comes to decision making. So I hope that helps.
Lots of appreciation for you in the chat, Patrick. I'm not going to read it. I hope you do read it. There is an appreciation for you from lots of people, and also just valuing the time they spent. And you kind of gave us a nice link into the reflection question to take away, which is, which of the 5 areas of human intelligence do you need to improve the most? So if you think about your own emotional human intelligence, which of those 5 areas do you need to work on most? It could be the cultural aspect, it could be the emotional aspect. Which one is it for you? And you know, sorry, my video just popped on, my own video just popped on my screen, and I had a moment of what is happening. But as Patrick said, which one is it for you? And also we talk about what are the practical steps. So it's not just identifying it. What are the things that you can do in your day-to-day, because that's how we build new habits. What do you do in the day-to-day that allows you to build that emotional intelligence muscle, if that's the one? If it's the culture one, which one is it? Like, how do you put that into practice? But from us, it's been fabulous. Patrick, I can't thank you enough. So much food for thought for people to take away with. And we want to say from SLF, we've enjoyed partnering with all of you on the call today. We would love to see you again next year. And our first date is the 3rd of February. The topic is leadership and influence, which nicely feeds from what we've covered together today. And our speaker will be from the Global Leadership Summit. So we look forward to seeing you. We hope you have a smooth end to the year and that you have a wonderful Christmas break. And thank you for journeying with us this year. And we look forward to seeing you next year. Patrick? Thank you, thank you, thank you to Nanhlanhla and Selwyn in the background managing all the other bits and pieces for us. Thank you very much. And hope you have a good evening, everyone. Thank you. See you soon. Bye.